because he's got such name value. You're talking he's going around 5, round 6, and I'm not willing to do that. I'm just not. There are just too many good wide receivers on the board at that time for me to roll the dice on McBride. Now, when I say roll the dice, I do think he's going to be good. I lean that way. I'm just not willing to pay the price to. Yeah, and I'm not in that round. I can't do it that round. Round 8, I'm fine. Round 5, round 6, I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest riser as far as any, tight end on the board. I mean, Puka Nacua, clearly the biggest riser ever, undrafted in fantasy last year. Now look where he's being drafted. But McBride is one of those biggest risers at tight end. By the way, his season total on FanDuel, as far as numbers are concerned, look at this, 800. I mean, this is 25, 30 yards off the other guys. Like, not far at all. So I guess this would speak to, George, maybe in the end you could be wrong here if that's the case, because, again, McBride going a lot lower than Laporta, but FanDuel's telling you they're about the same.
They are for yardage, right? Laporta is going to get more touchdowns, right? Almost certainly. So that's going to be a thing there. So fantasy, we're all greedy for touchdowns, what we want, especially from our tight ends. So I think he will be good. I'm just not willing to pay the price. Like I said, I'll wait 3 rounds later and take one of the lesser tight ends that we're going to talk about a little bit here. And if I was going to take round 5 on McBride, I would probably rather round 4 on Andrews then. A guy who I trust more. Who I know is going to be used in that red zone. The 3 touchdowns concerns me somewhat. Why didn't he get more? But then again, you remember who the quarterbacks were last year. The opportunities just may not have been there.
Yeah, and now as we continue on, this is sort of where the drop-off came in fantasy football tight ends. But you're still getting quality tight ends to this point. You're just getting what I would call the frustrating tier of fantasy tight ends as we talk about George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So why is Kittle so frustrating? He had 90 targets, 65 yards, 1,000 yards, 15.7 yards per reception for a tight end, 6 touchdowns. But here is the issue with George Kittle. And George, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. It's all in a couple of games. That's who Kittle is. There are times where if you are playing with Kittle on your roster, you're like, I'm winning this week. And then when you see him go off in some of these games, you're like, I'm just hoping I'm not playing against Kittle. And then the rest of the time, it's like a nothing. A very bizarre player, I think, in fantasy, because he's going to win you some weeks, and then other weeks, you're going to wonder how he fit into this top tier at the beginning of the season.
To back up Craig's point, he played 16 games last year. Didn't play the last week of the season. Right, a lot of teams don't play that. He only had touchdowns in 4 of them. That's it. 4 of 16. George Kittle, San Fran offense, only had touchdowns in 4 games. Crazy. And by the way, 3 of those in 1 game. So, yeah, he won you that week, right? Was that week against the Cowboys. Great. As if my life's not enough. What a mess. 3 touchdowns, 67 yards in that game. So, he's older, right? He's going to get banged up as well. He always seems to be on the field, but sometimes he's just not at full strength there. Plus, San Fran's sort of a mess. Right? No Trent Williams right now. By the way, I know that Brandon Ayuk thing's getting all the hype. I think Trent Williams is a much bigger loss than Brandon Ayuk. Now, maybe they're both there for week 1. Maybe they're not. We'll see. But you look at the record for San Fran without Trent Williams, it ain't good. When they don't have that guy blocking Purdy's blind side there. We'll see how that works out. Kittle, I am very wary of. Now, once again, I did want him in the league I was playing in now. I wanted him. He got taken. I wasn't sniped, so I can't complain about it. But he went the same round that I was willing to take him, which is where I thought where he should go. Like I said, round 7, round 8-ish. So it's where he should go. Yeah, I was fine with that. If you're going to wait that long, I'm good with taking a Kittle at that point because, as you said, the drop off is here. All right, all the tight ends now they have warts. We can think negatives probably much easier than positives here. No problem with Kittle as long as he's taken in the right round.
Yeah, I would agree. But I look at these numbers here. This is the first one I'm going to go under on. 750.5 receiving yards for the season. And again, Kittle is on one of my big leagues, Dynasty League. I've had him now for several years. When we talk about a shoe dropping, I could see it happening with him. I could. I'm not rooting for that. I'm rooting against it. I mean, he's one of my most important players. I'm going under this 750.5.
I think this first one you said. Your first thing is I sort of agree with you here. It's the first one where I would feel comfortable with the under. I don't think he reaches it either. We've seen that before with Kittle. He's once again up there in age. He'll get banged up. I agree under.
Yeah. I'm going to do that. All right. Speaking of frustrating, Kyle Pitts at the University of Florida, when he was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, it was thought to be a game-changing player at the tight end position. They backed that up with Bijan Robinson. Now they have Kirk Cousins. Great offense here. But Pitts, 2 years in, George, started to make some noise toward the end of the year. And Arthur Smith used to be, at the very least, a very good offensive coach, very menial numbers, but he's the hot name in the fantasy drafts this year. It was the hot name last year too. I guess that's what I would have to say. 667 receiving yards. A lot of folks predicting big things for him, but I don't know what it's based on at this point.
Well, he had 53, 667, and 3 there, right? That was with Arthur Smith, and maybe more importantly, that was with Ritter at quarterback.
Yep.
He doesn't have Arthur Smith anymore. He now has Kirk Cousins. All right, that's legitimate. I mean, I expect better numbers. I don't know if I'm going to go, wow, he's going to get 975 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 80 catches. I'm not going that high here, but yeah, I think the upside is there. And I think you can make an argument that I'd rather have Pitts over Kittle. Once again, because I think upside. I don't know about upside for Kittle. Pitts, I think, does have upside. Cousins is going to be huge, and I agree with you about Arthur Smith. I don't know if he was trying to sabotage his own team, or I don't know what the deal was last year. But that was just because not only wasn't he using Pitts, he didn't want Ritter to throw the ball. He wasn't using Bijan Robinson either. It just made no sense what was going on last year in Atlanta. Good luck, Steelers.
Yeah, no, it was weird. Kyle Pitts' total for the season 775. I'm sort of indifferent here, but I think the point that we've driven home here 40 minutes into the show is we're still talking about tight ends, George. You'd feel comfortable starting in fantasy.
And that's good news, right? Because they have been in a position, what do you say, the backup catcher in baseball? That's so true. Why do we start 2 catchers? But it's so true because tight end's been a problem, and it's better now. Or at least it's deeper now.
Yeah, it's deeper. And by the way, the next group we're going to talk about, startable tight ends as well. We'll head to Buffalo, talk about the primary target for Josh Allen next on Fantasy Sports Today.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
One change in the legislature in Missouri is that this guy who's just totally against sports betting there is not going away.
This has been in progress since last fall. They got 300 and some thousand signatures. All they needed was 170, but those were all certified by local election boards. That had to be done by earlier this month. By tomorrow, the Secretary of State has to verify all those signatures.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. The next 3 tight ends we're going to discuss, pretty comfortable picking in the later rounds in fantasy football, but they got to get better in the touchdown numbers in order to really make that impact to be starters every week. We'll start, George, in Buffalo, where Josh Allen got to know Dalton Kincaid in a big way last year. He had 91 targets on a team with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. 73 receptions, 673 yards, only 2 touchdowns. That was the blind spot for Dalton Kincaid. So now the question becomes, George, the easy narrative in fantasy this year is Kincaid is the number 1 target for Josh Allen. Now, if we're saying that, other teams know that too in the NFL. So that's not just as simple as it goes. The question is, can Kincaid, George, get 20% better at yards, getting up to 800-900, touchdowns, getting up to 4 or 5? If so, he's being drafted too low. But if not, he's one of the bigger, let's just say, narrative picks going into the season because where he's being drafted numbers-wise, George, is undeserved. The assumption is he's going to be a lot better.
Well, first thing I can tell you is that, Bills Mafia, Gabriel Morency, Mike Carver, they better hope he gets 20% better because Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, Marquez Valdez Scantling. That's your wide receiver room. If Kincaid's not putting up 20% better numbers, they got some problems. Now, I agree with everything you said. Obviously, defenses know this too. The problem is tight ends they're matchup proof. What are you going to do? You can't put a cornerback on them. They're too big. Safeties, they're faster than safeties. Linebackers, they're faster than them. They're just matchup proof. Are you going to double cover them? Maybe at times you will to try and eliminate him. But I think teams are going to want Kincaid to prove it first. Allen is looking for him. He is that good. So I think he's going to be able, if they prove it, they're going to have to go with some defensive game plans. The most important thing for Kincaid is probably Keon Coleman. I mean, you hate to put that pressure on a rookie, but they need him to be a number 1 and be a number 1 quickly, or at least be a threat. At least be a threat. And they need someone to stretch that defense to back those safeties off, or else this Buffalo offense is going to suffer in general here. I love what they said, by the way. They don't want Josh Allen to run as much this year because they don't want him, the wear and tear. He may have to run more. All right, to get the first downs and move the chains here. So I think it's going to be an interesting offense for Buffalo. That being said, Craig, I'm on Team Kincaid. I think he's going to do it.
All right. Well, if he's better than he was last year, then he's going too low. And if he's not, he's going way too high. Another player that we could have some narrative speech with is Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys, who about 3-4 games into the season took over as the primary guy. A ton of targets, 102, 71 receptions, 5 touchdowns. He's being drafted in Kincaid range. And this is one player that, again, albeit a very small chance, but let's just call it a small chance that we don't see CeeDee Lamb with Dallas. This guy should be going higher than Kincaid and maybe even higher than some others if that's the case. But we can't really play that game in the middle of August. We have to wait to see how that plays out. So that being said, assuming Lamb is there, do you feel like Ferguson's season can be repeated?
Well, you said Lamb has to be there. If not, the Dallas offense is toast. All right, it just is. Now, I do think Lamb will be there, as you said. I don't know why he's not signed already. The parameters of their deal, it just makes no sense to me. But that's a different conversation. I did draft Ferguson as that tight end in the league I'm talking about that I'm currently in. Got him about round 9-ish somewhere. Yeah. So I think it was my last pick. So a good, solid tight end. He wasn't the guy I was targeting. Someone was taken right before him that I wanted more, and I forget who it was. It might have been Kincaid. But so is what it is there. But he's solid because I think the numbers you saw there, I'll take those again. I think he can do a little bit better in a touchdown area this year, I hope. But I'll take 71 catches. I'll take the 5 touchdowns. It survives me. It doesn't hurt me. It may not, win me a league, but I can survive a tight end. I won't get killed there. Now, Lamb does have to be there. Dak obviously has to be healthy here. He's a good, solid tight end. I said got him around 8, round 9, which means I was able to load up on running backs, load up on wide receivers. That's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, and you don't feel bad starting him. The next player is really one of the more fascinating tight ends, I think, of all, and that's David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. You may say, why? Well, if you didn't watch last season, you would probably be fair in asking why, because he had 123 targets, 81 receptions, 882 yards, and 6 touchdowns on the season. And that is about where tight end 11, tight end 10, 12 gets taken. But guess who was one of the very best tight ends in all of fantasy football the last few weeks, George? It was David Njoku, legit. So the thing is all of a sudden, if Njoku is the guy again, my gosh, like we talked about Kittle bunching all of his numbers up in 3 games. This guy's numbers were all bunched up in the last few games of the season.
Yeah, now once again, if you watched last week's show where Craig ditched us for Joe Pisapia, Joe and I disagreed on Njoku. I kind of like Njoku, a tight end I wouldn't mind having. Joe pointed out, and he's right, by the way, can't deny that he doesn't have the point here, that all those numbers that Njoku put up were with Joe Flacco.
That's true.
Not Deshaun Watson. And you think about that, oh, that's true. Does Deshaun not look for a tight end where Joe Flacco did? Or has Njoku figured it out at this point? They're not going to have Nick Chubb for the beginning of the season, right? He'll miss at least a couple of games, September, IR, whatever it might be. They may not have them halfway through the year. Amari Cooper, I don't know what Judy's going to bring to this team. I don't know how good a receiver he actually is. But I don't think they're going to forget about Njoku. But I think worrying about Watson is something I'm going to do as well here. Will he look for the tight end here? That being said, I don't mind having Njoku. I'm going to bank on that. Those numbers from last year aren't going to be forgotten about.
Yeah. So I would say we'll take a break here. I would say before we get into our final little grouping of tight ends, that not a teardrop from my eye, but I feel like a teardrop in fantasy. I think that we've reached the line of demarcation, which is much greater than what we've had in the past. But I do think now, George, you're in your fantasy football draft and you haven't gotten one of the players we mentioned. I'm not feeling great about the rest of the options. Not feeling horrible, but I feel like the strength of those back-end guys is we're going to get to some that I'm not sure about.
I think that's fair, although there's one guy a lot of people are going to want to roll the dice on. We'll get to him after.
All right, we'll be right back with more fantasy sports today. Don't go away.
What has happened? What has transpired here at the First Bank Center here in Denver, Colorado? It wasn't just a big night of fights. It was a big night of memorable moments.
Conor McGregor with us here in Denver, Colorado. Good left hand from Rockhold. Right hand, right back from Mike Perry. Now 3-0 in BKFC.
Could I get a face-off with Conor McGregor, man?
It's an incredible setup here, incredible matchmaking, incredible storytelling. Oh, you had to come here. All these fighters that step in here are warriors, and all have my respect. And I'm into this game, yeah. We'll be into this, yeah.
And we are live here in the Maverick Center here in Salt Lake City, Utah, folks. What a night. It is going to be historic indeed for BKFC 56.
Whoever's the king of violence right here, this is going to be a great fight.
Perry on the turn, coming forward, let's have it. Right hand from Mike Perry, double jab. Who's the king of violence? I am!
Combat fighting in its purest form, bare knuckle fighting in the city of angels.
80 seconds remaining.
We've got the biggest announcement in the BKFC history we're about to make, so let's make that announcement.
What's up, Knucklemania? The notorious Conor McGregor here. Ladies and gentlemen, the huge announcement that I have for you today. Conor McGregor, myself, and McGregor Sports and Entertainment is now an owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Welcome to the big leagues. David Feldman, baby, we did it.
He's now an owner of BKFC with us, and we're going to take this motherfucking thing all the way to the top now.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports. Today on the show, we're going to preview the AFC South. We'll touch on the Houston Texans now. But before we do that, let's put a bow on the tight end position, George. I'm going to go through 3 tight ends with you in fantasy. These are the back end starters in your fantasy football league, or maybe even some backups at the start of the season for you. Evan Engram of Jacksonville, who was re-signed, great in PPR leagues with 114 receptions last year, so he would be one. Another would be Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles, who has been pretty significantly hurt over the last couple of years. He's missed a lot of games. And then finally, we have 2 more. We have Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, again, missed time, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, had horrible quarterbacking last year, too. And then you have Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans, who played on a really good team, but probably fair to say, George, people thought they were getting more from him last year than they got, with Nico Collins just really emerging as one of the best fantasy weapons in all of fantasy football. So those are kind of the 4 that it's like, all right, I'll start this guy this week, but I probably have somebody else that I'll think about. Any of these really click for you on draft day?
Well, Evan Ingram should be much higher. He's a top 5 tight end, top 6, top 7, whatever you want to. He's in there. We should have talked about him earlier. So Evan Ingram's. Look at those numbers here: 114 receptions, 4 touchdowns. You're taking that every day of the week here. All right, so those are really good numbers. He's come into his own since he left the Giants. Go figure. So yes, you want Evan Ingram. The others, and listen, I think there are more names we could throw in here. By the way, what about Brock Bowers? All right. They got the ballyhoo tight end for the Raiders, right? They may have to use him. Devontae Adams already banged up. You mentioned Freiermuth, Schultz, Cole Kmet of Chicago, who I think could have a nice season, but I am worried with Kmet. Gerald Everett is there. They might split some snaps. We don't like that.
Oh, stop. He stinks. You're not taking
He's
him.
playing right now. I don't care if he stinks. He's playing.
You're
over
insane
Kmet
if you take that guy. He's finished.
No one's taking him, but it might hurt Kmet's production because he's there.
Oh, I gotcha.
How about Tyler Conklin? All right, I think once again, I'm not starting Conklin, but if you're worried about one of your guys getting hurt, listen, Aaron Rodgers uses the tight end. He does use it. I can't have a better year than we might ordinarily think. I am not taking Taysom Hill in a million years. Okay, I don't want to talk about Taysom Hill at all. No way, no how here. But the other guys I think are interesting. The problem is, Craig, is this. I think if you have, let's just say you waited forever for a tight end and you draft Freiermuth, you probably got to draft Conklin too. Now you want to have 2 tight ends and play the matchup game each week. That's probably how I'm approaching this right now. Where ordinarily maybe I wouldn't take 2 tight ends. I would just want one, my starter, and once again, running backs, wide receivers. If I'm waiting this long, I am probably taking 2, and I'm going to play the matchup game of who I want to start. Who has the better matchup for so-and-so team week in and week out?
Yeah, I think all that is fair. And we continue our fantasy football preview now by focusing on the AFC South. Let's talk about the team favored to win the division. It is the Houston Texans, plus 105 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook, followed by Jacksonville, Indianapolis. And this is expected to be a pseudo-rebuilding year for the Tennessee Titans. In fact, their win total is close to New England's, near the bottom in the NFL. But Stephon Diggs is the big ad for Houston to go along with Nico Collins and to go along with C.J. Stroud. And you can understand why optimism is high.
Certainly. The offense is there, right? They should put up points there. Stroud, one of those quarterbacks who hit the ground running in year 1, right? He hit the ground, was fantastic, was great. Carolina probably wishes they maybe had a do-over. But hit the ground running and leads the team to where they are now. Bringing on Diggs, I don't know. That's a massive gamble, right? He's sort of forced his way out of 2 organizations now. They really couldn't wait to get rid of him. And now he's on a team where an up-and-coming team with young players. And is this the guy you want to have around you? And, I think they were smart that it's a contract year. He sort of has to behave and put up big numbers when you get that big contract next year for somebody. So I think that could work out well. But I think this is an interesting gamble. Plus, did you really need to? You got Dell, you got Collins. We talk about Schultz. Your passing game was there anyway. Are there going to be enough balls to go around to make everybody happy? I just wonder if this is a powder keg. And we're going to go down here and it's all going to blow up eventually here. So as a football move, I don't really mind it. But in real life, I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Diggs' defense, up until last year, the Hall of Fame trajectory wide receiver just didn't have the year last year that he had in previous years. But it is a fair assessment to see how he will do in Houston. But he goes from one good team to another here. So let's dive more into the Houston Texans. When we come back, they also added a very key running back to the mix that was one place where they probably needed an upgrade. So George and I will hit on that when we return next on Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. We'll be right back after this break.
This property runs this community. A lot of people from this community work here. They're proud of this. This has got a lot of history here. And then when you think about the beauty with the hills, the mountains, the trees, the water.
One thing about this place is one of the words he kept saying, family. It's a place that when my family and everyone comes, they treat you like family. They treat you like you're one of their own. And it's, obviously when you look at the place, you look at the rooms, everything, it's like taking a step back in time. And I think that's an absolutely amazing place to be able to put your phone down and slow everything down. I mean, the world these days is so fast. Everything has to get done so quickly. And every time I've come here with my family at Greenbrier, it's like everything stops and it's slow motion. You actually get to enjoy life, enjoy your time with family.
Just this place feels like I'm a kid again. You get out here, you see nature, you see the trails, you see going on a hike. I grew up in Fresno. We go up to the mountains every once in a while, and that's just kind of what it feels like a little bit. And obviously, it's more forested here and whatnot, but the 58, I don't know how to explain it. Just kind of semi-blacked out, you can kind of say. It was one of those moments where the last 4 holes, I was obviously trying to win a tournament, but it started to rain, and I just kept focusing on my game. I didn't get outside of this bubble that I created with myself. I just wanted to focus on hitting the next best shot. And I think that's what really pushed me on to focusing on obviously winning the tournament, but to shoot in the 50s and then ultimately make the 40-foot on the last hole for 58. That was just the cherry on top. And what a special moment, a special place in my heart forever, and probably one of the most special moments in my entire life.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. George Kurtz, Craig Mish back with you here as we're previewing the AFC South. We started off by discussing the favored Houston Texans, talking a little bit about Stephon Diggs in case you missed it. We move on to, of course, the quarterback, the most popular quarterback right now on a trajectory for a potential MVP is C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans. My gosh, was he the best pick in that draft? 7-1 to lead the league in most passing yards. I guess we're kind of at the point of not putting anything past this guy because nobody predicted that he would be the best quarterback in the class. He's been amazing.
He's been fantastic. And he's got a shot for the most yards. As much as I worry about the Diggs move, you still have Diggs, Dell, Collins. They're going to be able to move the football, right? You can't double cover them all. There's going to be a lot of cover, too. A lot of room over the middle for this team to throw the football. So, yeah, I do expect Stroud to have a very good season. Right? We're seeing in fantasy, he's pretty much a top 5, top 6 quarterback being taken overall. So I'm certainly not the only person there. So, I think he's got a shot at this. And 7-1, not the worst odds. I think MVP is in his a possibility as well for Stroud. Offensively, I'm fine. I think this team's going to rock. Defensively, we'll see. A lot of overs in their future.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so we just saw the graphic there of the fantasy points. Actually, a couple players we haven't hit on yet. Let's do it here. Joe Mixon, running back now for the Houston Texans, comes over from Cincinnati. We hit on Diggs. Nico Collins was a league winner in fantasy last year. He was that good. Tank Dell, really good too. This is just like a stacked offense, man. I don't know any other way to put it. And it just goes to show you if you can hit on the quarterback in the draft, you sort of owe it to him and the team and the fans to go all in. That's exactly what Houston's done.
Well, what do they always say now? When you have a good young quarterback run out of the draft, before he gets to that second contract where he's going to make, I don't know, by the time Stroud's up there, $75 million a year, you got to build him. You got to go for it now, right? You got to go for it, which is what they've done. And listen, kudos to them. It's what they've done. You bring on Diggs, you bring on Mixon, so they're going for it. I said I worry about the defense. It's nowhere near what the offense is. It's not terrible, it's not awful, but it's certainly not not the '86 Bears either.
So now let's go from the Houston Texans, George, and we'll move over to the Indianapolis Colts. It's the team we'll touch on next. And look, a lot of optimism going into this season, unlike last season. Last season, they were one of those teams, honestly, sort of chasing the bottom when you think about it. They went in with Anthony Richardson. He was quickly hurt. Jonathan Taylor was holding out. It was a very bizarre year for the Colts. And we really didn't see a lot of them last year to kind of know who they're going to be. They did get some decent quarterback performance from Gardner Minshew, who has since moved on. Jonathan Taylor is back in fantasy once again as one of the top picks being drafted because it's expected he'll play the entire season for them. Who would have thought that, right? We thought he'd be on a different team. Last year, 169 rushes, 741 yards, 7 touchdowns. Took him a bit to get going. But once it did, he looked like he had been in years past.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, right? It did take him a bit to get going before he became Jonathan Taylor again. So most are assuming this year he'll hit the ground running, right? Plus he'll have Anthony Richardson. So teams have to respect that, give him more room to roam here. So, and I sort of agree with that. He is going as a top 5 running back this season, pretty much right up there with Robinson, Hall, Taylor. Barkley, you want to put in this tier as well, is where they're going. The offense should be pretty good here. That being said, Richardson will steal some touchdowns himself, right? Because he runs the ball very well, and they better hope that Pittman stays healthy, because there's not much there in the passing game.
Yeah.
All right, you've already lost Downs for maybe a week or two, it looks like, with the injury. There's no tight end to speak of here. All right, Jelani Woods really hasn't been that guy we thought he could be. He's not. So if Pittman goes down, it could all be all about the crying here, because there's no one to throw the football to. So that's you can make an argument that's the key to this team, Pittman. If he's there, legitimate wide receiver 1, bottom tier wide receiver 1, but still wide receiver 1, the offense should move. He goes down, it is all over.
Jonathan Taylor, by the way, his rushing numbers at FanDuel for the season, just over 1,000 yards. And this is one that's kind of easy to extrapolate. Like, if you asked me over-under on this one, I would lean over. I mean, this is not a lot of yards over the course of the season to have. And, generally speaking, I know he has had injuries in the past, but 50 yards a game for Jonathan Taylor. If he plays 16 games, he's going to hit this thing. So I would probably lean over there. George, I was a very staunch critic of Anthony Richardson. I saw him play quarterback at the University of Florida, and I absolutely loved watching him play. But in no way did I think he was ready for the National Football League, and he proved me wrong in the brief period of time that he played with the Colts. So this year, the numbers are very high across the board for him. The expectation is he just continues to build on what he did in the early part of last year. Again, he was way better than what I thought he was going to be. And if he rushes like he did last year too, he's an upper tier quarterback in fantasy.
Well, I would agree. Everything you said there. The problem is, I wonder if he's someone who's always going to have some kind of injury. He got banged up a couple times last year before he finally came out, right? Now, you can make the argument he needs to learn to protect himself. If that was the problem there, and maybe he does, and maybe he'll get better at that. But he certainly has the issues as far as, once again, staying healthy here. Now, this number we're talking about here, it's only 184 yards a game. If he doesn't reach that, Indianapolis didn't do much, right? Because you can't throw 184 yards a game in today's NFL, you have an issue. Your passing game has an issue here. There's probably other problems here. If he stays healthy, I think he reaches it easy. We can play this game all year long here. These numbers are baked in that there are going to be some injuries there. So once again, that's what I'm worried about. Can he stay hurt? You need to be careful with these overs. You can't take every over, all right, because there will be injuries. You will lose. They want you to take the overs, all right? They do. They're begging you. They're baiting you to take the overs here because they know there'll be injuries. Listen, even Richardson doesn't have to be hurt. What if Pittman goes down? That kills your offense right there anyway, the passing offense. Yeah. So just keep that in mind there. It looks easy. It's not. They want you to take the overs.
Yeah, they do. All right. So now let's move on to the Tennessee Titans, where unlike the Colts, the offensive numbers are pretty thin. Colts better, I think, more fun going into the year. Titans 6 wins last year. Mike Vrabel out as head coach. I don't know, man. Like, I look at Tennessee and I'm concerned. Will Levis is there. You know, made that funny Mayo commercial the other day. 3,400 passing yards is his total on FanDuel. George, who's going to be catching passes from this guy? I don't know. Who's going to be the primary running back for this team? I don't know. It's not New England, but it ain't much better for me.
It's better than New England. At least they have guys we've heard of. But this is not a good team. Listen, what do we believe in Levis? Is he a quarterback? Or is he a backup? Is he a good backup or is he a franchise quarterback? You know, that's really the question here. And if he's a franchise quarterback, then the weapons around him they're not awful. You know, Pollard and Spears, okay, it's a decent running back tandem. They're both really the same guy there. I don't know if I would have signed Pollard if I was Tennessee. I might have wanted to go with maybe a bigger back to go a little thunder and lightning there. You got Hopkins. I know he's going to be out probably a couple of weeks there, but you got Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks. That looks like a bust there, but it's a decent wide receiving core. Certainly not the worst in the NFL. I'm not going to try and pronounce the tight end's name. Okanowo. I can never get that name right.
Chig Okonkwo was that?
Chig. We're going to call him Chig. Okonkwo. That's it. Okonkwo. Very good. 2 points for Craig. Okonkwo. I knew there was a way to say that. He's, once again, we didn't even talk about him at tight end, so we don't expect big things from him, but he's not god awful either. But Craig, this comes down to me in one name. Will Levis. Do we believe?
Yeah, like I get that, George, but the way that this team is built, it's like Hopkins from another team 2 years ago, Pollard from another team last year, Ridley from another team last year. We've seen this happen in sports before. You add a bunch of dudes from other teams and just place them in a room. It don't work, man. Like I'm telling you, you can't just add all these free agents and put them all together. I just think Tennessee's in line for a busted year, man. Not big on them in fantasy or reality. Jaguars are under some pressure to be better this year. We'll see if they have the opportunity. We'll preview them next.
What has happened? What has transpired here at the First Bank Center here in Denver, Colorado? It wasn't just a big night of fights. It was a big night of memorable moments. Conor McGregor with us here in Denver, Colorado. Good left hand from Rockhold. Right hand right back from Mike Perry. Now 3-0 in BKFC.
Can I get a face-off with Conor McGregor, man?
It's an incredible setup here, incredible matchmaking, incredible storytelling. Oh, you had to come here. All these fighters that step in here are warriors, and all have my respect. And I'm into this game, yeah. We'll be into this, yeah.
And we are live here in the Maverick Center here in Salt Lake City, Utah, folks. What a night. It is going to be historic indeed for BKFC 56.
Whoever's the king of violence right here, this is going to be a great fight.
Perry on the turn, coming for the left-hander. Right hand from Mike Perry, double jab. Who's the king of violence? I am!
Combat fighting in its purest form, bare knuckle fighting in the city of angels.
80 seconds remaining.
We've got the biggest announcement in the BKFC history we're about to make, so let's make that announcement.
What's up, Knucklemania? The notorious Conor McGregor here. Ladies and gentlemen, the huge announcement that I have for you today. Conor McGregor, myself, and McGregor Sports and Entertainment is now an owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Welcome to the big leagues. David Feldman, baby, we did it.
He's now an owner of BKFC with us, and we're going to take this motherfucking thing all the way to the top now.
We close out our AFC South preview with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Probably thought a couple of years ago we'd be talking about them as a Super Bowl contender, drafting Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence looked so good 2 years ago. But it's, since the end of last year, it's really confusing as to which direction they're headed. But Trevor Lawrence did get paid. I mean, look, you're just not going to get or find a better quarterback in the NFL in this day and age through free agency. So it's not about how good you are. It's just when you become a free agent, just like Trevor Lawrence got paid, just like Jordan Love got paid, George. I'm still a Lawrence believer. I don't know. Like, I know it took Peyton Manning a couple of years. I feel like it's just going to take Trevor Lawrence a couple of years too, but a definitive step back for him last year.
He's only 24 years old. I mean, damn. Be 25 in October for those who are wondering. So I want to believe as well here. Lord knows in my home league, he's one of my quarterbacks, so I need him to perform well there. I have some, I think hope's probably the wrong. I have some confidence they'll turn it around this year. I don't think they're as good as Houston. I don't, but I think this team has some good pieces. I'll tell you one thing: there's pressure on this team because I think you said it at the end of the last segment. If things don't go well this year, or even if they go well but not as well as expected, there's going to be changes. It won't be Lawrence; he's just signed the big deal here, but it'll be the coaching staff that goes bye-bye. Always a lot of pressure on Jacksonville because you play. You got to go to England, play a couple of games there. A lot of traveling. They've got people in place, but even if things all go well, it's not a superstar team, right? It's not going to be a 12, 13 win team. I don't see that, but I could see them getting a wild card. Lawrence needs to rebound and play better play. He made some mistakes there last year. What are you doing? Like when he's running the ball, he's holding it out here where he gets stripped a couple of times. Better ball control there. I think he tried to do too much or puts too much on his own shoulders sometimes rather than just play football and be yourself.
Yeah, but I think with Jacksonville, though, some of the ads they made in the offseason, they're just kind of like, we're all in on him. Let's just go all in further. They signed Gabe Davis. Not that he's great, but they have him there now. Travis Etienne, to me, is a top-tier running back. And then also, George, this kid, Brian Thomas, who they got, made, I think, a 41-yard catch in the first preseason game. He's been the talk of their training camp. Another player in fantasy that I think we have to keep an eye on. And look, Lawrence only threw 21 touchdowns last season. I think we forget that. George, if he just gets, again, and let's use the percentage, 20% better, that's almost 30 touchdowns again in fantasy football. So, I'm not done with Jacksonville. I'm still a believer.
I want to believe, because I do believe in Lawrence. What you said about Etienne, sure, he's a running back one. My problem is going to be with the wide receivers. You don't have a wide receiver one. Thomas might be that eventually, but I don't think it'll be this year. You're talking probably years down the line here. Gabe Davis is a field stretcher, which every team needs, by the way. You need a field stretcher to get those safeties away from the line of scrimmage, so that can work here, especially if you take a couple of deep shots out of them. Once again, let people know you're not afraid to do that. Christian Kirk is a number two. So where's that number one guy that teams really focused on? That's what they don't have here. Like I said, you drafted it. Maybe Thomas becomes that. We'll see. And I do like Thomas. I just don't know if he can be that guy this year. So I think it's still sort of a work in progress. I do like Evan Ingram. Mentioned good, solid tight end here. So the offense will move. It's not going to get 30 points a game, but it's just scored 24. I think I would be shocked if Lawrence, assuming once again he stays healthy, he doesn't get more than 21 touchdowns. I would think the upper 20s. So 20. You said 20% improvement. I'm thinking 25, 30%, 30% improvement there. Yeah. They'd be better.
No, he has to. Yeah, no, a lot of pressure there. All right, so let's take a look at the NFC South. That's our next conference division that we're going to preview here. Falcons are the favorites at minus 130. Bucks are plus 310. We're going to start with the Saints here. They're plus 390. Panthers 10-1. What am I missing, George, about the Saints? Why are the Saints close to Tampa Bay? Not that far back from Atlanta. Like, is it just that the division is not good? Because when I look at the Saints roster, it looks eerily familiar to what it was a year ago. I mean, they were okay. I guess, look, they were competitive in a lot of games. They went over their season win total last year. I think it was 8.5. They got to 9. It feels like this is who they are again.
We're looking at that schedule there. If you think the Saints are going to compete, they better survive, the first 6-7 games? You play Carolina, okay. Dallas, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay. Wow. I said you better survive that. It gets a little easier after that. We get Denver, Chargers, Carolina again. and then Atlanta, Cleveland, Rams. I don't see it. Bottom line is, I don't see it. Derek Carr to me is an average NFL quarterback, nothing special here. Kamara is an aging running back. And I say this as someone who drafted him in that league I'm playing in right now as my third running back. But he's an aging running back, already banged up now. I like Olave. I like Shaheed. Solid receiving group, maybe even good. Tight end, nothing to speak about there. Is once again, when I think of this team, when you think of most teams, okay, this is their bread and butter. What's New Orleans' bread and butter? Defense is solid, not great. You don't have a great passing game. You don't have a great running game. What are we thinking about with New Orleans? It just seems like they're just another team. Not just another guy, just another team. They'll be around 7 wins, somewhere around there. It may be 8 because it's a weaker division here. And I agree with you about what you first said. I don't know why they're only 80 cents behind Tampa Bay. Either Tampa Bay's priced too low or New Orleans is too high. There should be a bigger separation there.
Yeah, in sports, it kind of feels like, George, that New Orleans is a team that's playing for the middle, meaning that they're playing to win 8-9 games, and that's really dangerous. Sometimes when that happens, you generally get 3 wins or 4 wins. And if you looked at a lot of other teams in the NFL that are similar to them as far as talent and their record last year is concerned, I probably could make the case for, as we said, like a Jacksonville, that they ended up winning 13 and we got shocked. I can't see the Saints being that team. I guess that's the difference between me. I don't see them as a surprise team going into the season. Olave, I loved Olave going into last fantasy season. I mean, he was okay. He was banged up a little. He just wasn't nearly as good as I thought he was going to be. It's a fair point on Alvin Kamara. They signed Jamal Williams for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I believe James Robinson is on that team too. Yeah, it's just a strange run team right now. And getting back to glory with Carr and that offense, I'm not sure. The good news is that their head coach is a defensive coordinator, so you know that they're going to have a good defense going into the season. All right, coming up next, we preview the Buccaneers, Falcons, and Panthers. This is Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. We continue right after this quick timeout. Don't go away.
This property runs this community. A lot of people from this community work here. They're proud of this. This has got a lot of history here. And then when you think about the beauty with the hills, the mountains, the trees, the water.
One thing about this place is one of the words he kept saying, family. It's a place that when my family, everyone comes, they treat you like family. They treat you like you're one of their own. And it's, obviously when you look at the place, you look at the rooms, everything, it's like taking a step back in time. And I think that's an absolutely amazing place to be able to put your phone down and slow everything down. I mean, the world these days is so fast. Everything has to get done so quickly. And every time I've come here with my family, Greenbrier, it's like everything stops and it's slow motion. You actually get to enjoy life, enjoy your time with family.
Just this place feels like I'm a kid again. You get out here and you see nature, you see the trails, you see going on a hike. I grew up in Fresno. We'd go up to the mountains every once in a while, and that's just kind of what it feels like a little bit. Obviously, it's more forested here and whatnot, but the 58, I don't know how to explain it, just kind of semi-blacked out, you can kind of say. It was one of those moments where the last 4 holes, I was obviously trying to win a tournament, but it started to rain, and I just kept focusing on my game. I didn't get outside of this bubble that I created with myself. I just wanted to focus on hitting the next best shot. And I think that's what really pushed me on to focusing on obviously winning the tournament, but to shoot in the 50s and then ultimately make the 40-foot on the last hole for 58. That was just the cherry on top. And what a special moment, a special place in my heart forever, and probably one of the most special moments in my entire life.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on SportsGrid. The NFL is funny. There are some teams that surprise you, like the Houston Texans, and make a big jump. There are some teams that disappoint you. And then there are some teams that go into the season that have disappointed you, but for some reason we think they're going to be amazing. And that is definitely the category of the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons have gone from a team that was super frustrating, not very good last year, 7 wins, but everyone thinks the Falcons are going to be a force this season. And I understand it, George. I mean, look, they got Kirk Cousins. They drafted Penix. They have Bijan Robinson. They have Pitts, London. They've added now players on defense. I mean, you would assume the coaching is better. It can't be any worse, right? Like, these are things that are obvious. But are we too high on the Falcons and their players in the fantasy draft season? Or is Cousins and the coach going to make that big of a difference?
I mean, I don't know if Raheem Morris is the greatest coach on the planet, but he can't be any worse than Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith did not want to use his weapons. It was weird. Like I said, I can understand you. Okay, you're not throwing the ball because you had the quarterback and you didn't have a quarterback, right? Ritter's not a quarterback. I get that. But what was your excuse for Bijan Robinson? What was your excuse there? That made no sense. All right, the guy who we think is one of the best running backs in the game here. Cousins, I assume he comes in now. I assume he'll be healthy. I'm not worried about the Achilles. Aaron Rodgers, him. I assume they'll both be fine here. Although, once again, Cousins' injury was during the season. Rodgers, 4 or 5 snaps in. So, once again, Cousins had less time to recuperate here. But I think he starts from week 1. I think he'll be fine. I love Bijan Robinson. All right, fine. Drake London, fine. Wide receiver 1. Kyle Pitts, fine. I think it's a tight end 1. He'll be good. There's not much behind any of these guys. All right, this is like in fantasy terms, this is a stars and scrubs team. All right, anybody gets hurt here, you're gonna have problems. All right, Bijan goes down, problems. London goes down, it might all be over, but the crying. All right, there's nobody behind him. Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, really? There's not a lot much depth there. And Lord knows London's going to see every team's top cornerback and bracket coverage. Somebody over the top. It's not going to be easy on him. So he really needs Kyle Pitts to come along here and be that threat. That being said, I mean, it's a good team. It's a team that I don't think anybody's going to be dying to play here, especially in that dome when you're on the road. So, yeah, I do like the Falcons this year. I think they're the cream of this division. Do I think they're up there with the Niners or the Detroit Lions, maybe the Eagles? No, they're a tier down, but I think they win this division.
Yeah, and maybe that was more of the point, is that maybe the organization and Arthur Blank, maybe, George, they just looked at this division and said, hey, look, if we don't go for it now, when are we going to go for it? I mean, this is extremely winnable in a division that has not been for them for a long time. I mean, Tampa Bay with Tom Brady winning Super Bowls before that, the Saints with Drew Brees. This is it. I mean, those guys are gone. It's time for them to now go for it. But the bizarre move that was made by them in the offseason was drafting Michael Penix Jr., who, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much locked in as their backup quarterback to start the season. A dynasty league pick only at this point, George. I guess the question is, what ends up happening with him this year, and is having somebody over Kirk Cousins' shoulder going to be okay?
Yeah, we know Kirk Cousins didn't like it, right? He pretty much said so. He wasn't thrilled about the pick when he was told, the GM told him right before they were doing the pick they were going to do this, and he was caught off guard here. Like I said, I wouldn't have done this if I was Atlanta. I would have taken out. You got Kirk Cousins. You're trying to win now. Yeah, it's the same like with Aaron Rodgers when they took Jordan Love. I know people are going to point out, well, it worked out. They got Jordan Love. Well, maybe if you would have drafted that top offensive player or whatever for Rodgers, they would have won then. We could play that game all year long. So surprising here that they made the move with Penix. I don't think it's going to be a derisive locker room or anything like that. Oh my gosh, it's going to be a big problem here unless Cousins struggles. Then you're going to start to hear the media. They're going to want the new toy. All right, I want to see him play there if Cousins isn't playing well. But as long as Cousins is playing well, putting up noise, the numbers he always puts up, we won't hear about Penix this year, not without an injury. But next training camp is going to be interesting as well. So the story is not over here. This is going to be an issue here. But as long as Cousins plays well, all will be fine in Atlanta.
Yeah, and Cousins does have the weapons. There's no question about it. At wide receiver, at running back, even the backup running back, Tyler Algier, is one of the better backup handcuff running backs that's being taken in fantasy football this season too. Scored a lot of touchdowns for them, which we were annoyed at with Arthur Smith last year, but Algier did get his fair share of carries and goal line carries as well. All right, let's take a quick timeout here on Fantasy Sports Today. When we come back next, we will hit on the 2 remaining teams in the NFC South. Some promise once again for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what to make of the Carolina Panthers. Can they get better? We'll find out next. You're watching Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid as we continue on with our fantasy football preview shows. And we'll be back right after these messages, so stay with us.